Every Halloween, Sawtooth Jack, a creature from a small Midwestern town, awakens in the cornfields and makes his way to the nearby church. The people have a yearly custom known as the run that they carry out because they know they have to stop him if they want to prevent a calamity. Before midnight, Sawtooth Jack must be killed by all the teenage lads in the town, and everyone gets to eat the candy that is hidden among his organs. Killing Sawtooth Jack makes the killer a hero and awards the victim and his family a house, a car, $25,000, and the right to leave the village, which is normally prohibited. They believe that it also favors the crop. There is a one-son limit per family, and girls are not permitted to participate in the run. A group of youngsters wearing masks set out to find the monster in 1962. One of them is terrified and unsure of what to do as they stand by alone on the road. The youngster screams as Sawtooth Jack suddenly emerges behind him and kills him. Shortly after, the lads discover their friend's burned corpse and see Sawtooth Jack standing in the center of the cornfield. Jim becomes enraged and begins after the monster right away. Just as the monster is about to get at the chapel, Jim catches up to him and mercilessly beats him to death. He then takes some candy off Jack's body, and as the others follow suit, they all howl in joy at Jim's triumph. Jim receives all of his awards as the Harvesters Guild hosts a Halloween celebration to commemorate another successful run. Jim simply gives his younger brother Richie a hug and "I love you" before driving off in his brand new automobile. Richie begs him to go with him. A year later, 5 days before Halloween, Sheriff Jerry stops by the school to remind the teenagers of the significance of the run. He displays photos from the year they managed to kill Sawtooth Jack and the black duster that decimated their crops. Richie becomes irritated when Jim is frequently cited as an example of a hero since he wants to join the run but is unable to do so due to the regulations. Riley teases him for trying to offer assistance even though the others are genuinely at a loss for what to do. While some of the teenagers believe Sawtooth Jack is only an adult masquerading as a child, but is adamant that he watched Sawtooth Jack growing up outside his window. Riley also makes fun of him, which starts a brawl that is swiftly broken up by the grown-ups. Richie hides inside a movie theater when Riley tries to pursue him down the street to complete the fight after class. There, he meets Kelly, a recent arrival in town. They strike up a conversation and get along well, but when Richie invites her to the Halloween dance, she says she can't go since she's black. If Richie prevails in this year's run, he vows to alter that regulation. Then he runs into his closest pals Bud and Mitch, who have been hearing some awful things about Kelly, but Richie doesn't think they're real. Additionally, his pals persuade him to break the rules and join the run despite his brother's slower speed. Richie returns home in the evening to find a postcard from Jim, whom they haven't seen since he won the run, from his parents Dan and Donna. After Richie tells his parents he'll participate in the run no matter what, there's an argument that ends with Dan slapping his own kid. Richie becomes even more enraged by this and tells his parents they are powerless to stop him. He dashes to his room, climbs out the window, and meets Jim's former flame to spend the evening smoking. In the meantime, the farmer proceeds to carve a pumpkin in the cornfields as he approaches an abandoned scarecrow stand. After that, he ascends the stand, which is now occupied by Sawtooth Jack, who is dressed as a pumpkin. Riley catches Richie the following day and begins abusing him before taking his belt. Because the brothers used to wear matching belts, a sentimental memory for Jim, a vengeful Richie tries to defend himself with a knife, but Riley just beats him up again and walks away. When Richie returns home, he discovers his brother's letter waiting for him in the mail. Jim begs Richie not to participate in the run since their parents need him and expresses regret for not getting in touch with them sooner. Richie chooses to steal a car and leave the area since he is fed up with being treated like a baby. But Jerry gets in his way as soon as he crosses the bridge and gets to the open road. When Richie tries to flee, Jerry knocks him out before he can even get out of the car. That evening, all of the parents lock their children in their rooms to prevent them from escaping and joining the run. In a desperate attempt to get food or a restroom break, the guys bang on doors and walls, but their cries go unanswered. It's a tactic to drive them insane and ravenous for the run, so they have to spend 3 days in such manner. The farmer prepares Sawtooth Jack for action by cutting his ropes and stuffing him with candy on Halloween night. Finally, all of the teenage lads in town are freed to take to the streets and begin the run. When Richie wakes up in his bedroom, Dan is there to tell him about an excellent employment offer for the future, but Richie is only interested in the run. Richie leaves the house despite Dan and Donna's best efforts to stop him. Their entreaties are ignored. In the meantime, Bud, Charlie, and Mitch use a truck to gain an advantage in the run. Mitch swiftly intimidates the boys who accuse them of cheating until they leave. Richie eventually joins them at that point, but before they can go, the nasty bunch reappears and begins to damage the truck. Once more, Richie uses food to divert their attention as Mitch keeps them at bay, and eventually the boys drive off. As they head out of town, they don masks and see the butcher keeping hungry lads at bay by maintaining watch and brandishing a weapon. Because they think it's cheating, other lads also hurl objects at the truck. The majority of the gang is thrilled to get at the cornfields, but Bud is afraid because he can still clearly recall the day he spotted Sawtooth Jack outside his window. He doesn't want to do this, in contrast to his friends. Mitch had to stop the truck when it suddenly collides with anything on the road in order to prevent a collision. When they exit the vehicle to investigate because it won't start, they discover that the road is deserted. Then, believing Sawtooth Jack had been hit by the truck and they had already killed him, they see Candy close to the cornfield and run to begin devouring it. But they turn around when they hear a commotion, and that's when they see Sawtooth Jack waiting in the center of the field. Charlie and Bud are killed by the monster in a matter of seconds as the youngsters rush towards him. Mitch is also slain while trying to find the bodies. After that, Richie starts to run away while Sawtooth Jack roars at him and gives him a long look. He keeps going until he comes across the empty stand, where he is startled to see Kelly, who is also breaking the law there. To Richie's amazement, they also witness Bud rushing by. He dashes back to town after learning that all he had been doing was pretending to be dead in order to escape. His parents, however, forbid him from entering his own home and tell him to act like a man since they require the money. As Bud mulls over his options, Sawtooth Jack suddenly approaches him. He flees, finding a shelter where a group of youngsters are hiding. Bud doesn't currently have any cash on him, but they want to charge him real money to let him in. The teenagers are fighting over whether or not to open the door when all of a sudden there's a lot of shouting. One boy chooses to enter the door despite the objections, only to discover Sawtooth Jack killing Bud. A small child is screaming on a neighboring window as he witnesses Sawtooth Jack enter the refuge, kill all of the teenagers, and cause a torrent of blood to burst out of the entrance. Going back to Richie and Kelly, they decide to collaborate but will require stronger weaponry. Once again, they sneak into Jerry's house in order to take some beer and a gun. Richie is startled to see his father there, frightened and frantically pounding on Jerry's door, but he promptly leaves when no one answers. Dan is searching a neighbor's home for Jerry when Richie and Kelly also pilfer the police vehicle. After yelling at Dan, Jerry only gets to shoot a window as the kids drive away. After learning over the car radio that the monster has been sighted downtown, Richie and Kelly decide to go there. The youths have taken over the main street, causing pandemonium as they smash into stores and take as much food as they can. The butcher attempts to protect his company and even murders a few of lads, but they overcome him, beat him to death, and then take his meat as well. Furious by what they witness, Richie and Kelly try to flee, but Riley finds them first. Riley calls Kelly names and makes fun of her skin tone, mocking her for being a girl in the run. Kelly is grabbed by Riley's gang member, but Richie is finally enraged enough to defend himself. He beats the two men down and then points a revolver at them. Richie reclaims his belt before they depart, and Kelly seizes the opportunity to strike them with her club as well. The other boys, meanwhile, are getting really crazy and may possibly start killing each other. Sawtooth Jack soon discovers a trio on the loose and launches another attack. Shortly after, Richie informs Kelly of the unfavorable things he has heard about her and expresses his disbelief in them. However, Kelly clarifies that he did, in fact, set fire to an elderly man's barn since the man was a bigoted bigot. Kelly admits her parents are deceased, and Richie says he misses his brother and that all they've heard from him is the odd postcard. They are interrupted in their talk by another report over the radio that claims Sawtooth Jack was spotted on Oak Street. Without realizing that Jerry is laying up a trap and that the news is false, the two head in that direction. When they get to Oak Street, they first come upon a blood-covered statue before Sawtooth Jack himself shows up. As Richie realizes Jack is wearing his brother's belt, he stops in his tracks and runs to meet the monster. As Richie checks on her, Sawtooth Jack strikes Kelly's back and vanishes, stopping Kelly from hitting the beast with her club. Just then, a neighbor emerges and threatens to shoot them, forcing them to escape. After the two return to the car, Jerry finds them and shoots Richie through the window. He makes fun of Kelly's parents and says he killed them because they were trying to get out of town. Kelly becomes enraged and strikes him, causing him to fire his revolver, narrowly missing the side of her head. Jerry is promptly shoved aside by Richie and to get out of the automobile. Sawtooth Jack visits Jim's former residence in the meantime and finds all of the messages that were written on the wall during the 3 days that Jim was confined to his room prior to the run. The creature tears apart the entire building, howling in pain. Dan meets with Jerry not far away and tells him he is incapable of doing this. Jerry screams at him, telling him that this village needs to be brave and take the necessary action because the year they failed to do the right, he lost a close relative. Dan sobs but is unable to resist a police officer. When they get to Richie's house a short while later, Donna is visibly disoriented after taking too much medication. When Richie starts probing the past winners, he discovers that they have all had similar outcomes. Either they passed away unexpectedly or they moved far away and never got back in touch with their loved ones. Richie begins to suspect that Donna, not Jim, was the one who wrote the letter and the postcards. Donna tells him that this has to stop and chooses to self-delete when he begs her for the truth. Her statements support Richie's suspicions. The winners aren't enjoying luxurious lives. Rather, they are being sacrificed in order for Sawtooth Jack to reappear in their bodies the following year. Richie says he has to put an end to this and refuses Kelly's request to leave town. Locals in downtown are in a panic because of the massive fire at Jim's former home. Riley approaches Jerry and claims to have seen Sawtooth Jack close by. In an attempt to make Sawtooth Jack the winner this year, Jerry gives Riley his revolver and gets him into the car. Arriving at the church to wait for Sawtooth Jack, Richie and Kelly are shocked to see Dan there. Richie labels his father a monster during the ensuing dispute, but Dan maintains that parents don't know anything until their son triumphs. The Jerry and Harvesters Guild then swears them to silence, threatening to kill them if they tried to flee or notified anybody. Dan had a meltdown upon learning that his wife has passed away, even though he asks Richie to stop and let him handle the fighting. The church bell begins to ring at that point, and Sawtooth Jack emerges from outside. Calling him Jim, Richie rushes to welcome him and makes it clear he doesn't mean any harm. Sadly, Riley finds the monster and shoots him. As a result, Kelly rushes to strike Riley, who is holding Jack in his arms. Jerry intervenes as well and forces Riley to try again, but Richie deters Riley with a threat of his own gun after a second attempt. To Richie's surprise, Sawtooth Jack reaches out and twists his hand in a request to put an end to his misery. Richie apologizes to his brother and pulls the trigger because he wants this to end too. Richie is merely numb as the lads dash to get the candy, and Jerry congratulates him on his accomplishment. Later on in the celebration, Richie doesn't seem to be enjoying himself and is still grumpy. He doesn't care that racists will always be criticizing them for being an interracial relationship, though, because he dances and kisses Kelly as soon as he sees her arrive. Kelly gives him a gun in secret, and they decide to flee together later. After the celebration, Richie drives off in his brand new vehicle, ignoring Jim's ex-girlfriend's request to go with him. Dan approaches Jerry to try to shoot him in retaliation while Richie is driving away, but Jerry knocks him down. Kelly is picked up by Richie shortly after, and the two of them leave town. Richie tries to speed up as soon as Jerry gets in the police car and starts after them, but he nearly hits another car and has to stop the vehicle. After forcing Kelly to hide, Richie exits the car, only for Jerry to force him to walk into the cornfields while brandishing a revolver. Once they reach the deserted stand, Richie turns back and kills Jerry with 2 gunshots. Sadly, this is not yet finished. Richie is slapped in the head by the farmer as he arrives, causing him to fall into the hole he has previously dug. When Richie pulls out his knife and begs for forgiveness, the farmer crushes his hand before beginning to bury him alive. The farmer finishes up and drives off, revealing that he was in the car that obstructed Richie's car. Kelly eventually emerges from hiding once she is certain she is by herself. Dan discovers her and advises her to seize the opportunity to leave town. Kelly, crying uncontrollably, leaves without more incident. 1 year later, the farmer excavates Richie's body and prepares the pumpkin, which gradually transforms into the boy's new Sawtooth Jack head. Dan appears on Halloween night, frees the monster, and continues to refer to him as Richie. Dan murders the farmer when he arrives, then orders his hideous son to set fire to the entire town. To ensure you never miss any updates on new videos, kindly click the bell icon, subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.